all about it. In the bad news, it's a story, the unfinished story. It's all about this band that has a dream. People,
it's all about it. Hey. Yo, we're doing a show with Pet Boy Steez. Hey yo, back. Another episode. What episode this is? Episode 4 of my vinyl review. Hey yo, it's music under the sun, baby. We're back and summer's close and we are about to be outside. A lot of cool things are coming besides the pod, besides these reviews. There's a whole lot of stuff that we have lined up for music under the sun and for days under the sun, and a whole lot of cool shit that's coming for you, you know? So today, probably I would have given you a hint by now, you know, of the review I'm doing. And that's a skit that always stays in my head, one of the songs that's always in my head when I hear the guy sing, read all about it. Yo, today, it's one of the best bands in the world, one of the coolest bands in the world, one of the greatest bands that sits next to the Beatles, Backstreet Boys, like, hey yo, you name it, yo. If it's a cool international band, those guys just sit in the same seat with those guys. So today I'm doing a vinyl review of a band that comes from South Africa. Just coming from a whole lot of spaces, coming from a whole lot of places, you know. I was fortunate enough as a youngin to meet one of the co-founders of this band by the name of Lloyd Nilosa, one of the keyboard players and the co-founder of the band Stimela. And today, as I gave it up, I'm doing a review of this project called Stimela. It's called The Bad News, The Unfinished Stories by Stimela. You know, one of the coolest projects that Stimela took out. And we know there's a lot of great songs that the band created, but today I'm looking at this project. You know, the band was actually formed in 1972, but the band was actually called, it was made up of members from the band called the Cannibals, which Ray Phiri used to play there, and he was a member of that band. And then later, those members just like kind of integrated into creating the band called Stimela. But there's a story behind Stimela. So the guys were playing outside South Africa, in one of those African countries, and the guys, whilst they were out there, they had an issue, and they had to come back home, but they didn't have money. But one of these African countries, and they just rocked the show. Like, they played a really cool show, but they just didn't have enough to come back home. So the guys had to sell their belongings in order to raise fare to come back home and to come back with a train. The journey back home was the train, and then from there, from that incident or crisis that they had at the time, they just formed the band called Stimela. One of the greatest bands to kind of come out of our country, you know. One of the greatest bands to come out of our country. The co-founders was Ray Phiri, Lloyd Nilosa from the East, from Aslam Efoslo, and also one guy by the name of Isaac Mchali. Baba Isaac Mchali. They created this cool band. This band, like, yo, bro, it's done a lot of cool songs with the likes of Coyote, and one of the co-founders of this band. And it's a hard review for me because I can't separate the two without the other, you know, and it makes it so tricky for me to want to talk about this record but not talk about this guy. Ray Phiri and Stimela, but there's that thing they always say that Ray Phiri wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Stimela. You know, there would never be a Ray Phiri without Stimela. So it's really tricky for me to not want to talk about this guy, but to talk about Stimela. So the two topics just like outweigh and weigh each other, you know, in a sense that Stimela, Ray Phiri stands stronger than the band, you know. But today I'll try my best to like break it down, you know. But this review, it's just like one of those reviews where I want people just to relate to the music. It's not academic, it's just me telling stories of how I grew up and the music I collect influences me. Everything that's in my collection is stuff that I love, except the CDs that I got from my uncle, you know, and he inherited them from my uncle. And today, this project is one of the greatest projects to stand to come out of our continent. So Ray Phiri was fortunate enough to be part of the guys that composed or produced Graceland with Paul Simon. It was a big chapter of his life, but he had to come back home and create some more memorable music through our stories, you know. So they created a project called Bad News, the Unfinished Story of Stimela, which is really, really one of those interesting projects, you know. One of those interesting projects where there's a lot of bad things that was happening in South Africa, a lot of obstacles that the band had, and the individuals in the band had. But they had that thing, which throughout all these bad things, or the tough times that was happening in the 70s, leading into the 80s and 90s, they wanted to tell their own story, you know. They wanted to tell how they were living, they wanted to tell how things are going for them, and just like it's so interesting enough. Even with the cover, you know, just want to show you the cover. The cover is really interesting in the sense that the cover was actually made of all stories that have been published on the news. So this album art, dude, like it's really crazy. You can see from there, like these are just like newspaper cutouts, like of all the things that was written by them about the band. From even at the back, like the really interesting things that were actually written, the bad and the good about the band. It's fortunate enough, bro, like when I think about how I got this record, I don't remember if I bought this record in one of the record stores in Cape Town. Bought this project for 150, like 150, and then I saw that recently Gallo pressed this record, and this is one of the first pressings, you know, of this project. But I saw a repressing currently that Gallo did, and it's distributing through Mr. Vinyl. They pressed it on a pink record, a really cool pressing. This pressing is one of my favorite pressings, you know. As you look in there, you can see like the whole band inside, Rade and the band, Lloyd Lilosa, Isaac and Charlie. This is the band members inside, cool sleeve, really shot beautifully and done in a very, very stylish way, you know. I wish I lived in this time because this music reminds me of like my childhood, you know. Kuleleka, see, it's music that was played usually like in my tavern, like in my shippy, and even a of feeling, you know, like sometimes we weren't allowed to go into taverns or shippies, as they call it, you know, as a kid, but we are as a classical culture there, we see uncle this of tune, give you a bottle and put it in a plastic and be like, yo, don't I have, go buy something from me, you know. At the tech shop or the shipping or anywhere, monge available. Shibino, the tavern, really dappered out, wearing flow shams, pointers, chilling in their element, you know. But it's one of those rare sights that you would actually experience like once or twice a year, you know, where about 2 young, you know, tavern, Cholaba Plomine, Kalu music you can hear Ray Phiri and those like Afrofusion sound, you know, from that time, you know, Coyote, and all of those bands or musicians that came out of that time. So it's a really, really interesting project in the sense that I really stuck with me. The voice of Ray Phiri really stuck with me through time. That husky voice, he's dancing, you know, like the way he used to dance, the way like that thing really stuck with me, you know. He's one of the guys that I wish I could have seen or experienced live alongside Brahim Masikela, Lebu Matosa, and just to name a few, our soul brothers. Like, those are guys that I wish I could have experienced in my age, but I wasn't fortunate enough to see them, you know. But today, music like really plays a huge role in my life, you know. So I'm gonna wanna read you couple of these articles that are here. Maybe just like read the headlines where it's silence is golden for Stimela, back to the US for Stimela. Stimela stands for Black Upliftment. Ray Phiri sparkles on Phiri's horizon. SA Group offered overseas sales for record label. Musician of the year. They mentioned Ray Phiri there with 38.8 votes. See lines like Stimela's Ray Phiri tops the City Press Music Hall. Hooray! New York praises SA musicians. Stimela going international. Stimela hits misinterpreted. Two SA groups joined Paul Simon for the world tour. You know, like those are like one of the coolest, you know, one of the best to come out of this continent, to come out of Africa, to come out of South Africa. Today we're fortunate enough that we could tell history. Time away, you know. It's one of those sounds for the landscapes that sums up how we grew up in the township, you know. I love how the stuff was so political. They told the message in a way that was really impactful through the words, through the music, and getting people going, just like having a conversation about the times that they were going in, especially our African brothers and our black uncles, mothers, aunts that were really oppressed by the regime at this time. So there's even cool things, you know, about this cover. So this cover doesn't really have credits on, like on the cover, on the sleeve itself, on the artwork itself, but they did it on one of the sleeves, you know. So this record is a really old record. So this record was actually pressed by Ghana. But one of the things I like about the captions that come out of this record, it's just like how the music had so much personality at that time, and you can even tell it from the liner notes that actually come out. There's really interesting stories from these liner notes, but I was also trying to decode that who might have wrote these liner notes, but having to watch a lot of interviews with Ray Phiri, I see that quirkiness of the messaging and how these liner notes were actually written, you know. I'm gonna try and read a couple for you from this pressing and just like be fascinated about like the language and just like the shout outs on the liner notes, the stories, like, you know, the context. I feel like it's one of those things where like if you were to read it from a book, you know, like I must have stayed away to watch all things, you know, back in the day where everyone throws in and stuff like that. It feels like one of those stories, you know, and how they written, you know, this thing. So I'll just give you credits of the guys that are part of the projects before I go into the liner notes and the shoutouts that probably wrote. The cover was shot by Costa. Front page newspaper concept was done by Ray Phiri. Cover designed by EMS. The edited mix of the project was done by a guy called Dave Siegel. Story covered by Stimela. Reporter producer, which is the producer of the project, is by Ray Phiri, the man himself. This record was printed and recorded at RPM, you know, studios, and then mixed at RPM studios. RPM studios, Powerhouse. Typesetting digital mix was done by also Dave Siegel. Typesetter, digital edited by a person called Jenny. News editor was done by Stimela themselves, the band, which is just like the story that I told about the band. Printing, pressing, distributed by Galo, one of the record labels that signed the guys. And then these are the liner notes that I say are really interesting, you know, and really funny. Words, it says, as you read, it says, words of thanks from Stimela to the Big Four. you know. I don't know who the Big Four is, but they're the coolest, yo. It says, as we're reading this, it says, friends, families, foes, not forgetting lovers, wives, fathers, sons, brothers, mothers, daughters, sisters, teachers, doctors, preachers, hostel dwellers, miners, street cleaners, student dreamers, believers, DJs, reporters, taxi drivers, bus drivers, liars, promoters, sponsors, and admirers. Keep those letters coming, for they are what keeps us sane, you know, like, I guess those are the guys giving shout out to everybody, bro, like, the stuff that is actually writing to and the people that he's thanking, you know. One thing I like about this, at that time, they didn't refer to their followers as fans. And that's why sometimes I struggle with the fan, the word fan, but supporters, you know, supporters of the movement. And then one of the liner notes was, actually this one is written for Isaac and Charlie. It says, this one is for you. May your father's soul rest in peace. Wish you and your family the best, you know. That was like a condolences to Isaac and Charlie, who was one of the co-founders of the band, and Ray Phiri wrote like a message of encouragement for him. And then the other one goes to Lloyd, which is Lloyd Losa, who's also one of the co-founders of the band, and it says, compadre, words won't be enough. We have been through trying times. Hang on, don't lose it, you know. I think maybe that was a tough time for them as a band, and also for one of their members who was the co-founder. When this message says Charlie and the nickname is Babas, turning a new page won't harm the little ones. You are blessed to be a father. A message of encouragement as well from there, like Charlie was actually having kids and was having a child, and just like telling him that, yo, you're starting a new journey, bro, and that's so cool. And then the other message is to Thapelo. It says, Thapelo, boyfriend, hope the Korobela won't work on you, for you are a special person. The world is your platform. Hey, that's so dope. And then the other one says, Jabu, it's in the Jabu Baba Choose. Thanks for not appearing on the sleeves, for it would have been too sweet. Keep them guessing. Yeah! I don't know what that is. And then the one of the comments there, this one goes to Ray Phiri. There's nothing to say. I have the best family. I have the best family. There would be no Ray Phiri without Stimela. You know, there wouldn't be a Ray Phiri without Stimela. Like, so dope that they sent this to him. And then this one says, and then here it says, special thanks to the following musicians, you know, Bagiti Kumalo, Ash of KK. We have graced the grace of Graceland. To Coyote Nana, I have known no better person. Keep your feet on the ground and reach for the sky. And then the other one talks to Jen, which says, your emotions, dedications, and personalities are unequated. And then there's a one where now they like naming a couple of people, Katie, Leon, Tu, Nopiwa, Felicia, the students from Fubu. I've run out of words. I just don't know what to say. You are special talent will always keep us together. You know, like I think those are like the contributors on the project, and also coming from a certain organization that played a role in this project and what they've been doing for them. And then this other one, I'm a nickname on Pumada. This nickname says, Teaspoon, please grow up. We want a spoon now. Yeah, these are actually cool. And then the other one says, Manda Masugu, yes, Siabazi Abad. You know, like I don't know what that means, but maybe it's like one of those inside phrases. You know, it's like, yo, Siabazi Abad. Because now we're actually big, you know. So that's one of the messages, one of the few last ones, and then they give a shout out to Panasonic. But you are national for you, national for you. You are national for you sound like the true national Panasonic that you are. Thanks for the staff of Gallo. I won't mention names. Eat your heart out, for I have the Princess and Ashes spy. You guys are great. Keep on writing the story. And then this was actually the liner notes that come on there, and then there's like words from different songs. But that was something that's interesting that I wanted to share with you guys. When you get the record, you can actually read these liner notes. They're really, really interesting, and they tell you more about the project. So today I was actually reviewing this project, and one of the dopest projects. But not to leave you with no story. There's a story I want to leave you with. That's what I wanted to say. There's a story I wanted to leave you with, which the story talks about Ray Phiri and how actually he started playing. So Ray Phiri was initially a dancer, and he tells the story of him dancing. And Ray Phiri actually is from Nelspruit, which is in Mpumalanga in South Africa. He's not from around Gauteng, but he came here to kind of do things, and there's a story that he tells where he realized that this music thing was a thing when he actually was thrown 35 bucks on the stage. And that's why we have the project 35, the song 35 Rand. That's him telling the story where he says when he got that 35 Rand, he got the money, he came to Joburg, he bought himself some Chuck Taylors, bought himself a Pringle jacket, bought himself some Lee jeans, he bought himself some nice swag. You can even tell from Stala Sagaba Phiri with that homie was swagging in his time, But the initial story I also wanted to tell was the story of him actually picking up the guitar. So his dad lost his 3 fingers, and his dad owned a guitar. When his dad lost the 3 fingers from his hand, Ray Phiri asked the dad and was like, "Yo, Mdala, how you gonna strum the guitar? So please give me the guitar. Can I please inherit your guitar since you heard now?" The dad passed the guitar over to him. But the funny thing is that the guitar had little mannequins on the head of the guitar, where you tune it. It had a couple of dolls on there. But those dolls were puppets. So whenever his dad played, those puppets would move in different shapes, like in a really weird way. That's where those puppet dances that he does on stage happen. When his daddy could play, he was mimicking those puppets that were on the head of the guitar. And then it further evolved when he started playing and started performing. He started performing as those puppets on the head of the guitar. That's how the dance, or those dances, actually originated, as you watch the videos about Ray Phiri, Chikapa Phiri. So from there he inherited the guitar, he stopped dancing, and he started composing music. As he was one of the most important people in the project, and it was a big pivotal moment for him when he moved from the band Cannibals to actually coming to Stimela, and starting Stimela with some of the founders of the other band coming together. But when this band started, they got other members to join the band, Initially other people left, and then new people started coming in, And then that's when the project just became big. The guys started touring the world. But we need to give a shout out to the Pops, for giving him the guitar, and then for him to actually pick up the guitar. And then today he was the lead singer of the band, and also one of the co-founders of this band. It's one of the greatest bands to come out of our city, out of our country, and out of our continent. So if you haven't really listened to this project, this is your moment to go and listen to this project. This is a cool project. This is a beautifully written project. It's got really, really dope hits. And today I'm zooming into the song Read All About It, the unfinished story of Stimela, one of the songs that really, really, really became a really life-changing moment for me as a kid, hearing that song. And I always wanted to know who was the artist, but as I grew older, I started like following the band Stimela. I was fortunate enough to meet Losa as a kid, a pianist, one of the greatest maestros in South Africa, and it just became the greatest greatest soundscape of my time, you know. Explains a lot of time when I see old people drinking Black Label, Hansa, chilling on crates, chilling in a tavern, having fun, just listening to the music, you know, listening to Afro fusion at the time, you know, amongst other artists like Humans Together. So go check this out. I'll be playing Unfinished Story by Stimela, one of the dopest songs, and please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll be coming out with another cool one, another dope bands to come out of South Africa. And
story.